Welcome to the Photify Academy. This is Angelique Boulding, and I am your host. Joining me today is our own sales director, Jorge Garcia. What's up, Jorge? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So we've been having some pretty fun conversations back and forth about loyalty loops and the idea of how we use data to build relationships. So if you're somebody in the brand space that is no stranger to building relationships and trying to make sure that you're creating an authentic experience for your customers, you know that data helps marketers refine our messaging and campaigns, and that ultimately more effectively persuades our audiences to buy. But we can also use that data to build stronger, more trusting relationships with customers. And ultimately, the number one goal is turning customers into and transforming customers into brand ambassadors and advocates. And Jorge, we've had this conversation a lot. A big thing that I preach, and I guess I really have such a passion for, is how to humanize a brand experience so that rather than making it transactional, it's far more transformational in why they want to buy. So with that, I want to let you kind of have the floor here for a second and talk about some of the things that you've learned in how, from a sales perspective, you've gotten to know your customers, and maybe even talk about some of the things that we do here at Photify that have really changed the game for us in that space.
Yeah, totally. I love what you said about making it transformational as opposed to transactional. So it becomes much more about somebody actually having something that changes the way that they interact with an audience, for instance, right? And what we build are tools that allow people to share, products, for instance, with a large community and direct people by sharing those products to maybe a website where those products can be purchased, right? So we recently did a really large report. We pulled a bunch of data on how customers are using Photify and then what they're really getting out of using it. And I don't know why that sounded really funny to say the way I said it, but what we ended up learning was that for the most part, a lot of these customers are sharing information about products that their company is selling, right? And there's a bunch of different assets on our platform that they can use. There's assets that are sort of licensed type assets. So, they might have a product partnership with a particular brand. And those products weren't necessarily so popular. You would think that they would be, but really what people wanted to do was sell individual products, right? And so what we learned about our customers is people are trying to use our platform to promote products that they can sell and make money off of, right? Which is a huge learning, right? Because we are understanding that what we have is not necessarily a sales tool on our hands, but a kind of marketing content creation tool that allows them to tell the story of what they're up to and what they're actually putting out into the world that is beneficial to other people, right? So right there, when we start talking to people about what our product is, it's not so much, come and check out this product that's going to help you increase sales as much as it's a product that's going to really easily allow your employees or distributed workforce to tell the story of the products that they're trying to get out into the world.
Yeah. And the other part of that report that I really enjoyed outside of just the product marketing component was recognition. And just to back up for our extended audience, our market is essentially our program works best in the hands of a distributed sales force. So at the end of the day, our customers are individuals that market and sell products on behalf of a larger organization. And so what I thought was so great about that is, it's not only how they position the products that they're selling, and like you said, those licensed content, but also how big of a component those I want to say reconciliation, the recognition content was. Yeah. So they're focused on celebrating the people amongst them. They're focused on lifting up the other sales individuals and finding ways that they can show that it's a family effort. They're helping those around them grow while they grow. Going more into some of the tactical side of things, we have great touch points of data as far as how our users are creating on behalf of a brand. But even further, some of the work that I love is on the customer success side of things, is honestly picking up the phone and doing one-on-one conversations with some of our top users. And those have been, just so interesting to really give them a space where they can feel like they're a part of the brand.
What are some of the things that they say to you when they're saying, hey, I love this? And then what are some of the things that, they wish they can also have on the same platform? Let's start with the things that they love. Like, I would love to know a little bit more about what you're hearing.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest takeaway and what I love hearing is just how intuitive our program is. And so it's more so about the conversation of opening up an area where they feel comfortable feeling as though they're collaborating with us as an organization. At the end of the day, we're providing a service, we're providing a product as a service. And with that, it is enabling them to have a safe space where they're like, hey, I'd love to see a template that does XYZ. It would make my life so much easier if you guys had 20 more Instagram story templates. Hey, have you thought about making business cards with QR codes? And so I think that realm of customer data, just from conversations has been great. I'd go on to extend into our user surveys. And, we've created these incredible, communities of 10,000 users plus that give that feedback loop. They're constantly like, and sometimes it's, hey, you got some bugs going on. Hey, we're a technology company, that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, what's great about that is they're conditioned to knowing that we want to collaborate with them, that
they're invested also. They're invested in the,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We win when they win. And ultimately, that's the biggest thing that I think we do well at and we're learning in is continuing to grow in that space of how do we elevate the collaboration between us and our customers. It's going back, we're not transactional, we are transformational. How can we help them transform their business through the tools, the training, and all of the insights that we provide them?
Yep. And then also in turn, how do they help us develop a better product for them, right?
That's the bread and butter of this. Like, it's like, what is that? There's a book that I was recommended recently where, you could sit all day and think of, why your product's not working or what you would do differently. But if you don't talk to your customers, you will never know. You could spend so much time in guessing. And that's where that data comes into play. That's so important. And I'd go on to also say, it's the external to internal collaboration, but it's also so important for internal teams to be communicating. And I think it's best that marketing, sales, business development isn't, it's not on its own island. We're talking to the salespeople. You got your customer success folks over here, customer service, you got your trainers over here. We all have to work in tandem to learn from one another and ultimately the customers and those touch points that we have.
Absolutely.
What are some other, opportunities or trends that you've seen in the data space that has helped companies inform decisions?
So, looking, one thing that I was talking about with a friend recently was he was telling me a little bit about how interesting of a company Facebook really is. I feel like Facebook either gets a bunch of love or they get a bunch of hate, but they're just such a massive sort of entity, and that just comes with the territory. But
what team are you on?
Which I don't know. I don't fully. It depends what day you catch me on.
I was just gonna. That's me. Yeah, depends on the day.
It depends on the day. So one of the things that I find really interesting that he highlighted for me was, Facebook is actually enabling people to do things like drop their cell service, right? And so they are able to, instead of having multiple, subscriptions that they're paying for in order to facilitate communication, you can pare things down because of Facebook and the decisions that they've made based on data that they're probably looking at. It's easy to say, they have this messenger app, and people were probably using the heck out of it. And because of that, they were probably looking at other communications apps that they could potentially purchase. And when they saw WeChat, for instance, I'm sorry, not WeChat. What am I thinking about? I'm not. WeChat is like a app. Which one?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. Yeah, WeChat is like a different company altogether. But WhatsApp, when they saw WhatsApp, it made complete sense that like all of their current users could simply download WhatsApp and start communicating with friends and family around the world, conducting business without having a cell service subscription, right? So then all of a sudden they get to cut that expense out of their lives and have just a Wi-Fi service, that they're paying for at home, and wherever they go, they're on the phone and they are communicating with the people that they need to communicate with. Sorry, that was so long-winded. But yeah, so it's pretty remarkable, and that just goes, these decisions obviously are not made, and I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody knows this. These decisions are not made on a whim. These decisions
years of feedback, years of analysis, and what's cool about that is they've created entirely new companies, organizations, and products based on how they've viewed their customers and how they use their platform. And then they built tools to address those needs.
Exactly. And that's it's amazing. Again, transformational, right? So
yeah. Well, and in the name of Facebook, again, depending on the day where I land on them, I think they've definitely transformed our world in many ways and how we communicate. But the topic of big data can be a little dirty too. And I think that there's kind of a fine line between how much companies can learn from their customers, to the point where, I don't know about you, sometimes I'm on the aisle of like, it's nice when Amazon or one of these hears what I'm talking about. The next thing I know, I have an ad serving me. It's kind of like, oh, well, okay, like I did need that. But it's also like, it's a little invasive.
It's a little invasive, but I think that the conversation shouldn't be like, this company's bad or good. I think that, it should, and it's weird because a lot of conversations end up going that way. It's kind of the way we're sort of trained to think from a young age. We're reading books about good guys and bad guys, and there's these protagonists, antagonists. But the truth is that the relationship is a little more muddy than that. And not muddy. Muddy is a bad word. Again, it's like negative, but it's a little bit more abstract, And the truth is that certainly there are some problems with some of these large companies, and the fact that they're collecting massive amounts of data on the world, right? But there's also so much utility to that, and it creates this opportunity where they can actually build things that serve people, right? And that to me is amazing, right? So like, I think
it's all dependent on whose hands it falls into. I mean, anybody could turn something one way, but I think at the end of the day, I think most companies have the goodness, in mind when they're creating opportunities. But sometimes you also can't forecast what could happen as a result. And the opposite, can end up in the hands of, malicious areas too.
Totally. I mean, and that goes for everything. I think it's just, I think it's really important to just think for a little bit about the opportunities that products present you, and then decide from there, like, do I need these opportunities or do I not? And if you don't, I mean, stay away from what you don't necessarily need, and then, bring into your life what you do need and assume the risks and kind of decide, whether or not you want to walk in step with that.
Yeah. So another thing that I want to talk about, because, I'm a big old brand geek, and I love brand personas and building brands from the ground up and understanding what makes a good brand tick, is personas. And I think that that's another layer of understanding your customer that helps you better build those personas and kind of have a not metric, have something to calibrate towards. Because the more you learn about your customer, I think the interesting thing is you could also learn that who you thought was your customer is somebody completely different.
Yep.
And on the flip side, who you want to be your customer and who ends up being your customer, that also helps you understand, like, hey, something in my messaging is not right. I need to recalibrate so that I'm really speaking to, Photify Paul and what he does, how he thinks on a daily basis. And so I think that data just helps us better understand human behavior. At the end of the day, it's, you want to make it human. You want to talk to people as you would talk to a friend. And I think that's where brands are really going to win is the more human they can really be in how they position themselves.
I agree. And that creating personas helps you to actually think about humans rather than just like this abstract group of people who are potential customers or prospects or whatever, like actually creating, Sally Shoemaker, who, is going to be using your platform because she has a product to sell and she makes these really wonderful shoes. And she is, 47 years old. She is a single mother and she has this business that she's running all on her own. And what she really needs is support, right? And so you start thinking from that sort of line, right? But then you dive in and you start understanding who she really is and new things come to light. And then you update those personas and you sort of create maybe 4 or 5 of them for a particular group of people that you're trying to sell to. And you start looking at them and you say, okay, this bunch of people actually looks like this. And I can say that because of the, again, data that I've gathered from the ones that are actually working with us and the way that they're actually using our product, right? And you turn around and all of a sudden you have a group of people that you basically define your entire user base, which is amazing. And again, it's a group of people. It's not just some abstract sort of target in the dark, right? Which is terrifying,
And the one big point and last point I want to bring up that you pinned on there is that's where you understand their problems.
Yep.
And when you understand your customer's problems, you can be the first one to offer a solution. And that's a great way that brands can be positioned as helping. So I think that's a really, really good point to bring up because at the end of the day, we all want to solve someone's problems and we want to make sure that our program and how it runs does that.
Yep. 100%.
Well, cool, Jorge. I think what are we going at? We're almost at 20 minutes.
What?
I know. Let's turn it over to viewers and see if we can get some, audience insight on, some of the things that they've learned from big data or, any data, sales data, social data, and how you've used those and that information to better your product and better your experience as a brand. So thanks, Jorge. Let's do it again sometime, even
Absolutely.
though we're remote, kind of halfway across the world from each other.
Yep. No, cool. Let's do it. I really enjoy this. And the more that I think it's really important to talk about things that you have sort of kicking around in your head that you're sending emails around about, but actually talking about them forces you to be present with them in a different way. And it's always a little bit nerve-wracking to me, but I really appreciate the exercise and thanks for inviting me to do this, Amy.
Well, now I know where you're at, so I'm going to make you do it again.
All right, let's do it.
Take care. Bye.